Hey, and welcome to Silver Senders. On today's episode, we're going to talk about buying a new bike, the things to look through, the things to look out for, and some tips and techniques that I wish I'd have known when I started looking for a new bike about 18 months ago. So you've either got an old bike lying around and you're thinking, shall I upgrade it and then use it? I did that, and the answer is no, waste of time, money and effort. The geometry's changed. The parts that you will need to put on your bike are old parts, as in the way they fit, the way that they operate is very different to the way bikes are now. So it just ends up being a money pit. You never really achieve anything, and it's just a waste of time. So spend the bare minimum just to get it rideable so that you can keep riding, but buy a new bike. The other thing is maybe your mates are getting into bikes and you want to. So really what's happened is you're in a position where you need to now buy a new bike. So the question is, where do you start? Now, what I'm not going to do is go through different bikes, different specs. There are people who are far more knowledgeable than me. There are people who've got far more experience, and there's people that got access to those bikes and they can give you a really good in-depth review and feedback. I can't do any of that. So what I'm going to talk through is just what I wish I'd have known when I started looking. So the first thing you're going to want to do is understand your aspirations. What is it that you're looking to get out of mountain biking? There are many disciplines. You can be cross-country, you can be downhill, you can be trail riding, you can be bike parks and jumps and drops, and you can be dirt jumping. And that's just a few, right? There's, I'm sure, many more disciplines that I've missed I'm not aware of that they exist. But you're going to want a bike that matches those aspirations. So there's two things to think about. There's where you are now. So what are the features that you're riding? What are the styles? Where are you going? And then there's where do you want to be in a year, in 18 months, in 2 years? Now, you really do progress on a mountain bike. I'll show you. Here was a video of me when I started 18 months ago.
Nah. Fuck.
And this is a feature that I've just hit for the first time a few weeks ago. I wouldn't have believed you 18 months ago if you'd have said I'd be doing that line. So you will progress. So you need to understand how far do you want to progress and where you are now when buying a bike, and consider those things. To help you understand those aspirations, there's some questions you've got to ask yourself. And they align with what you enjoy and what you almost enjoy watching when you're watching videos of other people. So, for example, do you like the idea of zipping really fast down a track, hitting some technical routes, maybe some drop-offs, and it's all about speed. It's just how fast you can get from top to bottom. Do you like the idea of jumping straight up in the air, maybe even throwing in tricks? Is it one-handers, one-footers? Is that kind of where your aspirations are? Do you actually enjoy the full end-to-end of going up a hill as much as coming down a hill? You know, all the technical rocks that you've got to hop over, the power through your legs, the speed in which you get to the top, and you actually want to spend 3 or 4 hours going up and having just as much fun as you do coming down. You know, do you want to be able to ride skate parks and indoor bike parks when maybe the weather's wet, or, you know, you enjoy the concrete, you enjoy the tricks and the different transitions? And also, like, what are your friends riding? What are your friends up to? And are you planning on going with them? Once you understand the answer to those questions, it should probably start to make sense what side of biking you're going to get into and where you're going to go. For example, one of the friends that I go with, he's not really fussed on jumping. He much prefers the speed, the flying through past trees and rocks and roots. And I don't. I like going to the bike park, and I just like focusing on getting out, throwing tricks in. So actually what that means is, even though we started off riding together 18 months ago, we hardly ride together anymore because we're just into different spots. We're into different communities. And that'll just happen. You'll find the communities and you'll find the riding styles that you like, and you just build a new set of friends, a new group, and you'll enjoy your mountain biking that way. So to understand the different kinds of bikes, again, this isn't technical. This isn't telling you top fives or which bike to go through, but it just helps you understand the sort of bikes you should be looking at this research phase that you're in. So if you do like flying down more than anything, and it's about speed and rocks and roots and drops, and it's, you know, it's really intense, you're actually going to want either a trail enduro bike with a lot of travel, or even a downhill bike. So those are the people that just spend all day just firing down, going super fast. So it is, you're looking at bikes with more travel in the forks, more travel in the rear. If you enjoy kind of more smooth, still fast, still jumps, but there's more of a smooth aspect to it, you know, they're more purpose built, there's more berms, there's more flowy, you're in the enduro kind of trails riding, where the bikes you want are probably more mid-travel, anything from 140 up to 170. And yeah, those kind of bikes, just not as heavy, and they're capable of climbing, so you can get up to the top. They're just not made for climbing. If you want to spend all day going up, going down, then there are cross-country bikes. They all look very similar. It's just the geos start changing slightly. The components maybe aren't as strong for the duress of, you know, throwing yourself off an 8-foot drop off. It maybe won't hold out. So that's kind of why, when you understand what you want to do, the different styles of bikes, although they look very similar, but one being a cross-country, one being a trail, it means they are built, when you put them under their extremes of capability, they are built differently to handle different features and scenarios. So yeah, it's a cross-country bike. If you like going out on big bike rides where it's just as much up as down, you backpacked up, you've got your, you know, your water, that's going to be a cross-country bike. If you want to ride sort of more focused on air, tricks, jumps, and you want, when I say jumps, you want to do jumps where you kind of go up at a much steeper angle and land on steeper angles, or you can go to skate parks. That's where you're going to want a dirt jumper. They're single speed. They have travel, but they have about like 100 mil of travel, and it's very rigid anyway. 26-inch wheels, they're much smaller. You're never going to get one of those down, or if you do get one of those down the side of the mountain, you're going to feel it all in your wrists. You've only got a back brake as well, so it's going to be much harder to control and manage. So they just really are made for dirt jumping. And I guess if you're really unsure and you want to try a bit of everything, which was the situation I was in, you go for a trail enduro bike, where they're just as good at cross country as they are going down a black run, and they can even do some of the bike park jumps and the dirt jumps. They're not as comfortable as obviously a 26-inch dirt jumper, but they can do some dirt jump lines and stuff. So once you've gone through that big existential thought process around what is it that you're looking for, what style of riding you're going to do, what your aspirations on what levels you want to be at on a mountain bike, the next thing is to start really trying to identify a mountain bike brand, and specifically a bike model. Now, it's so different buying a bike now to what it was 20 odd years ago when I used to buy, you know, my BMXs or whatever it was I was buying. Now you've still got all those traditional brands like Giant, like Scott, like Specialized, who still operate through networks of bike shops and distributors. I actually went with a Specialized because I kind of didn't quite understand the range and what you can get. Now I love this Specialized, so I wouldn't change it for the world, but it was just, I really didn't understand the full, I guess, array of bikes and ways of procuring bikes that exist today. There are also direct-to-consumer bikes, so Canyons, my dirt jumper's a Canyon, great bike, great service. The Commensals. You can also go on the sort of now, I don't know how you describe them. They are cheaper in terms of cost, but it's more because they're made from the manufacturers in places like Malaysia, and then they direct sell them. So that's going to be bikes like Polygon. My daughter uses a Polygon. I have to say, it's a great bike. You know, great value, great parts. So there's all these different, I guess, ways to consume the different bikes. So you first of all got to have a look through and see which ones you're comfortable with. Have a look at their specs. Have a look at the styles of bikes, even things like the colours. You know, we're all fussy. And just get familiar with the bikes. You're going to want to go online then. Places like Reddit are great. Reddit's can get a bit, catty like all online forums, but generally the community is really good. They'll answer any questions if you're unsure of anything. There's going to be things like 99spokes.com. You can put in the bike that you're looking at, and it will, the year, the bike, everything, and it will show you the different, all the specs on it, where it rates against other bikes in a similar category, so you can see which ones maybe have got a bit more spec for better value. You can see, they'll even link out to professional reviews. So, whether it's Pink Bike or one of the other big forums have actually done a detailed look into that bike. You'll be able to read up, see what it's about, get familiar with it. And then obviously there are going to be YouTube videos and all that fun stuff, just to really go out and watch as many as you can, understand as many brands as you can and what the bikes are on offer, and really narrow it down. You don't have to just do online research. Because mountain biking has got such a great community, and people are ever so friendly and always helpful, actually go out to the places that you do ride, go out to the places that you want to ride, and see what bikes people are riding. Talk to people, find out, their stories, what bikes they bought, what bikes they've got, the reason they've got it, because they've all will tell you, they've all got stories. Here, for example, in Sydney, where I live, a lot of people ride Commensal. Well, that's because we're only 10 minutes, 15 minutes from the Commensal distribution centre for the whole of Australia. So actually, it's really easy for us to go and test the bikes out, ride them. They've always got loads of stock, and they're good value. So there's always a reason why people have got the different bikes. You find that bit of knowledge out, all of a sudden then it means if you're shopping on for example, with Commensal, knowing that the distribution centre is nearby, you're no longer just treating it as a direct-to-consumer brand where you're having to read reviews and look through. You can go down to the bike shop, you can ride it. And then obviously, not all bikes you're going to be able to, because Canyon, for example, they ship from Germany. And then the final kind of part to discovering the bike and the brand that you want is getting out to the bike shops. Read the different geos on websites like 99 Spokes, see which bikes are similar, then go out and try some. Try one with a slacker angle and see how that feels. Check out the Giant, check out the Specialized. You might not get access to maybe some of the onlines, or, they might only sell certain bikes around where you are, but go out, try them, get a feel, get an understanding. So it means that even if you do decide to go with an online one, you've got more of an idea of how it's going to feel because you've been sat on a similar bike with similar measurements in the bike shop. Now, it's not a guarantee. Not all bikes are the same. The geos are going to be slightly different, and they're going to be paired with different suspension settings and configurations. So you'll never get a like for like, but it gives you a rough idea of how this new world of geometry is going to feel compared to when we used to ride 10, 20 years ago. For me, the biggest difference is the head tube angles. It's almost unbelievable to think you could even go over your handlebars anymore, because obviously we used to ride them, they were like that. It's so easy to go over. Now it's nice and slack, and it takes a lot more to get booked. You still can, just takes a lot more. So the final part, you've kind of nailed down what style you're going to do and where you want to get to. You kind of know the bike and the brand. Which level do you go? Which spec level? Do you go with their entry? Do you go with their mid? Do you go with their all singing, all dancing? So I guess to start off with, mountain biking is expensive. You buy the mountain bike and you think, right, I've got it. But then you've got to buy your helmet, depending on what type of riding you want to do. That's going to be a full face helmet. It's probably going to cost you another $300. And then maybe you're going to want to wear gloves to keep your hands a bit more protected, feels a bit more comfortable. That's another $50, $60. Then maybe you're going to need knee pads. That's another $100. Maybe you want the elbow pads. Maybe you want chest and back protection. That's another several $100. And then if you're not lucky enough to have the trails or wherever you want to ride right next to you, you're going to need the bike rack. That can be another $200, $300. So whatever you spend on the bike, there's probably another 20% on top of that hidden costs that you're going to need to factor in just for equipment, things you're going to do to kind of support you riding the bike. So bear that in mind first. The next thing is to kind of really think about that spec level. So I went with a mid-level Specialized stump jumper, the comp alloy, because it had the Fox forks. Now, I didn't understand how the Fox fork system worked, so I had 34s on it, and they were what they call the rhythms. I had no idea. I went on Pink Bike, it said Fox 34s, but the rating on the forks was only 3.5 or 2.5 stars out of 5. I couldn't work it out. I was thinking, but they're Fox 34s, because I just didn't realize that the Fox have the rhythms, which are the OEM bottom of the line ones, and then right the way through to the factories, which are, you know, the Kashima coating and the Grip 2 dampeners and all the fun stuff, which, you know, I can tell you, having now got the factory forks, the difference is unreal. Like, they're so much smoother, the way that you hit things, the way they absorb things, the landings, like, so much more configurable, so much smoother. So I get it. I understand the differences. What that means is you've got to think of where the spec is on the bike to where you're riding now to where the spec's going to be in the future. Now, in truth, after about 9 or 10 months on the rhythms that came on the Stumpy, I felt like I'd exceeded the capability of the shock and the forks. What do I mean by that? They were bottoming out all the time. I was constantly messing with the air pressures. I even, on the forks, had got 5 tokens in the fork, in the dampener, to make the progression, so I could have it squishier in the low end, but then it wouldn't much tighter in the high end. I'd bought for the float DPS, I'd bought the token kits, and I'd put the biggest token in there. So I was really trying to configure it to get it as smooth as possible. And it just reached a point where it was just either bottoming out or it was just too uncomfortable, too stiff. So those middle range components, your ability does exceed them. As I say, it took me about 8-9 months to exceed them. And again, that can get quite costly. So then the decision is, do you go bottom entry level stuff where maybe you'll exceed those components even quicker, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and then you do an upgrade? Or do you even go the other end where you save a bit more and you buy, maybe not get the factory, but you get the performance, which have similar configurability and dampeners and what in there? And this is just forks. I mean, the same applies to your drive chain, brakes, you name it. It's all the same concept. So you've really got to think through where you are, how far you're going to be pushing things, how quickly you're going to progress. You can sell stuff, even the OEM stuff like the rhythms secondhand, or this came with the NX drivetrain. I have upgraded a few bits to the X01s, just because, again, the gear changes weren't, you know, I was noticing it when I needed to move quickly. I was getting stuck, I was getting caught in gears, and you notice a big difference. So it's kind of, and it's very hard to do, but it's almost planning out your upgrade process. You go straight in with a bike that's got everything. Trouble is, it's probably going to cost you 8,000-9,000 Australian dollars. I'm not sure where you're from, which is a lot of money to put on a bike that maybe you're not quite yet there on capable. But then likewise, you go bottom end and you pay $3,000 for a bike, but then you know you've probably got about $5,000 worth of upgrades coming. So it's just something to consider when you're in the spec level and the spec side of the bike. Again, another thing you can do when you're looking at the specs is go down to the spots that you do ride, go down to the spots that you want to ride, speak to people, understand what components they've upgraded on their bikes, what components they don't seem to care about on their bikes. So, for example, I'll give you a really good example of this one. On this one, the Stumpy, everybody says you've got to upgrade these SRAM G2R brakes. They're rubbish. They're not good enough. Well, I just do bike parks, jumps, and it's all smooth, really. So I just need my brake to stop at the end to get off and push it back up the hill. So there is no need for me to upgrade these brakes. There's nothing I do that is critical or, you know, needs to be on point where I'm about to hit a route or turn here or do that. However, on the other side of it for me, the forks were really important because I was doing some pretty big features. Look, to conclude this video, and I know it's a bit of a strange one because I haven't really given you any recommendations. I'm just trying to transfer the tips that I've learned over the last 18 months. So if I could talk to myself back then, this is what I'd have told them. Would I have changed anything? I don't know. I like the stumping. I feel comfortable on it. I like the geo. I've spoken to people who say having the shock mounted higher up in the frame, for example, they used to have that in an old bike, and now they've got a new bike with a lower mounted shock, and they don't like it because they don't feel it's as... So there are people who do regret decisions on bikes that they've made. I honestly don't regret it. I like this bike. The component aspect, it's difficult. It's difficult to know. If I could go back, would I have changed it? I guess if I could go back, maybe the first thing I'd have done is bought the base level, and then I'd have probably, because that would have been $2,000 cheaper, and then I'd have probably used the money 6 months later that I would have spent on the rest of the components on the fork and the shock. But that's just my riding style. That's where I was aspiring to, and that's also with the benefit of hindsight. So there are plenty of resources out there in the real world, by going and speaking to the people in your communities and the spots you want to ride, through to online. And the good news is the mountain bike community really is a great community. People do help each other, people do answer questions, and people love to support each other. Everybody's also got an opinion as well, so collect as many of those opinions as you can, which is really useful for then collating all that information to deciding which bike that you get. And again, you can do all the research. Another thing to consider is supply chains. Certainly here in Australia, some bikes are really hard to get. So it might be all well and good that you found this bike here. That's the one that you want to ride. But if it's not going to be available for 6 months, I mean, in lockdown, I had to wait. I think I ordered this in the April. It didn't arrive till the November. So I don't know, 6-7 months. I had to wait 6-7 months for this bike. And there's a bit of an old saying that the best bike is the bike you can ride now. So, you know, you've just got to kind of figure out some of those supply chains, what's available, what you can get, price range. It is confusing. If you've got any questions, any comments, honestly, the community is the place to go. Read reviews, do as much research as you can, but just be mindful of, just be certainly going through those 3 steps of where am I now? And where do I want to be? What brand? What bike do I go with that suits my style? You know, cross country, trail, whatever. And then what spec level should I buy? And then buying that bike with that spec level, knowing the bits you would need to upgrade, and then thinking about, well, you know, what would the upgrade plan look like, and how long you'd expect to be in a situation where you'd need to upgrade. Now, I really do hope this video was useful. I hope there's plenty of wisdom in there for you to make the right decisions and feel comfortable in the bike that you're riding. If you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like the video, share, and if you've got any questions, please just comment, and I will come out with a new video next week. Thank you.